Hello and welcome to the Nightmare Vault. Today we'll be covering He Comes.
I had something, but
Yes, I'm sure you did.
although this one's actually surprisingly old and, well, highly rated, which
Yeah,
kind of surprised me because I don't actually recognize the name of this one.
I think I found this one on the famous list that's on the CreepyPasta website.
I think this one might have just kind of been in my blind spot.
And yeah, I guess doing a little bit of research as we're just setting things up, kind of looks like it probably would have been one up your alley. So to find an older one that, is unfamiliar to you is pretty cool. So it'll be new for both of us. I guess, with relating to the ratings, we've got a 8.73 out of 10 with 1.63k votes, which
Says it's pretty good.
yeah, I would assume so.
Actually, I'm going to move my back back so I don't get as much breathing noise as we did in the last video. Holy shit. I was like, I think we edited a good chunk of it out, but there's still a fair bit there.
Yeah.
But that's because I was basically deep throating the mic. Although I'm probably going to come in a little quieter, but I think a lot of people would say that would be a good thing.
And yeah, also from doing a little bit of research, found that this one, I guess, features, or at least a part of the story is a famous evil character, Zalgo, from the creepypasta, I guess, world of things. Have you heard of that entity or that creature before, Zalgo?
I think so, but I'm not super familiar with it. I think it's something I'd probably heard, but haven't got around to checking out.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think I came in quite a interesting time period. I don't think I came in when it kind of hit its, well, I think I kind of came in after it hit its peak. So yeah, you got the really early stuff and then you have it when it's taking off. And I think I was coming on just kind of as it was coming off its peak in popularity.
Right.
So I was a little late to the party, but that gave me a nice backlog of classics to go through.
Yeah, and that makes sense that I guess there would be a few of the more popular ones that probably would have slipped through your gaze at the time.
Although I got all the essential reading ones out of the way. Though.
Yes, it does seem so. Credit to Chris Phoenix, who I assume is the author. Tried to see if there was any other works or at least like official sort of lists of things from Chris Phoenix, but it did come up with a couple of hits, but it didn't seem like it was the same person. So
yeah, that's also another problem because, well, how many Chris Phoenix are out there?
Yeah, true. All right. I think that's all of the kind of technicals out of the way. I guess we should get onto the story.
Oh, yeah.
Forgive the length of this message. This is the first and possibly the last time I'll have access to a computer, so I thought I'd better write this all down while I can get it out to those who should know. I'm leaving town. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just getting as far away as I can. Okay, so as some of you may know, I took out a loan and opened my own auto shop a little over a year ago. Business has been going decently well. I can't complain. And I've always been grateful to all of my customers who would come to me exclusively when God knows there are so many already established places in town. I've been doing well enough that I was able to hire on my buddy Neil a few months ago. And he's been working hard and helping out really well, as I always knew he would. Well, I needed to take a day and go to a Lamaze class with Rebecca last month. And so I entrusted the shop to Neil for the morning and most of the afternoon. That's the day I think everything actually started. Because when I got back, he seemed to be in a stupor and was covered in oil. He even had some smeared across his face, as if he'd tried to drink it or something. I told him to go home and clean himself up because we had no clients at the moment, and I could take care of anyone who came in for the time being. He came back 45 minutes later, but he was still much quieter than usual. He worked as well as he ever did, but something just seemed off about him. I asked him if anything happened while I was out, and he just shook his head. I asked how many clients we had, and he just muttered something unintelligible. I asked him to repeat himself, and he turned and glared at me. For the briefest moment, I could have swore his eyes appeared to be completely black. No iris, no sclera, just utter all-consuming blackness. I stumbled back and bumped a shelf, knocking things down. When I looked back at him, he was still looking at me, but he didn't seem to be glaring hatefully the way he had before. He just seemed kind of out of it. Just a couple, he answered. Some woman, and then a tattooed biker type looking dude. I assumed one of them must have asked for an oil change, and that's when he spilled it. So I asked if he had any trouble, and he simply shrugged. I had looked around the garage while he was gone, and I saw no traces of an oil spill. So whatever had happened, he must have gotten it all on himself, and none of it anywhere else. But he seemed reluctant to talk about it, so I didn't press the issue, and we worked on throughout the day. That day and the next were relatively normal, other than him still being awkward and quiet. I asked him if he'd like to go out and get us lunch while I tended the shop, and he said, sure. When he came back, I was busy doing a diagnostic for a client. So he put the food on the counter in the office to wait for me, and he went ahead and ate. I finished up with that customer. We'd have to keep her car overnight to figure out just why it kept dying on her. So I asked Neil to give her a ride home, and then I went to grab my food. He'd brought me some Chinese food and an iced tea. So I opened the soy sauce packets to pour some over my food when I noticed the strangest thing. It was as if the soy sauce was a living thing somehow, spreading out like dozens of squirmy, inky black maggots when it fell into the fried rice and burying itself inside. I took the fork and started to scoop out the rice to look deeper inside, and small smoky tendrils would rise from the rice occasionally and dissipate. I was incredibly hungry at that point, but I was way too creeped out to eat that, so I chucked it and the iced tea in the garbage and decided I'd just wait till I got home that evening to eat something I'd prepared with my own hands. I'd never in my life seen anything remotely like that, and I couldn't even fathom how I would ask Neil if he'd noticed anything similar. As cold and distanced as he'd been lately, I was sure he'd look at me like I was Looney Tunes, so I just shut up about it. That Friday we went down to the old watering hole, as we always do, to get some drinks and watch the local bands play. And Neil was just as quiet and distanced as he had been all week. He's not a bad-looking fellow though, and so despite him not really going out of his way to speak to anyone, a woman went over to where he was sitting and started talking to him, and they ended up leaving together that night. Monday morning, I tried breaking the ice by asking how his weekend went. He gave me a nod and muttered, "All right." I asked him if he got lucky with that young woman I saw him with, and he gave me the smallest grin, which was quite possibly the first grin I'd seen on his face in a week, and said, "It went well." I didn't pressure him for details. I knew he'd share if he chose to, and his small grin was enough to assuage my worries and lend me some hope that he might get back to his old self soon. The day was relatively busy until about 3 p.m, so I finally had a spare moment to sit in the office and listen to the radio while I waited on the next client. So there I was, leaning back in my chair with my feet propped up on my desk when I swiveled around and looked at my bulletin board that sits behind my head with all manner of clippings stuck to it. I had a few Sunday comic strips such as Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes that I'd read maybe 100 times since I'd opened the shop there, but that day something was different. The first panel seemed normal, but in each subsequent panel, inky black tendrils crept out from the edges of the frame and from behind the characters. Blood dripped from the ears and eyes and sometimes even their noses. and in each of the strips, one of their characters would say, "He comes." I sat staring in astonishment for a moment before I realized the tendrils were moving ever so slowly, and then each of the characters' heads turned ever so slowly towards me, and I threw myself back away from the bulletin board, sliding over my desk and onto the floor. I ran out into the garage and yelled for Neil. I could not be the only one to see this. To my surprise, he had gone, and so I hesitantly walked back to the office and peered inside. The comics were still corrupted, but they no longer appeared to be moving. I crept over to it and reached out to pluck one of the comics free, when I noticed the inky black tendrils started to seep across the page towards where my fingers were, at least 3 times as fast as they'd moved before, and I jerked my hand away. Nothing good could possibly come from letting that blot of ink touch my skin. Of course, I ripped the entire bulletin board down, burned it in a tin trash can out back, and never spoke of it again. That night I went home and my wife was already in bed, fast asleep. My mind was racing and I couldn't even bring myself to eat dinner that night. With no one to vent my worries to, I fell into a restless sleep and kept awaking to nightmare after nightmare, seemingly every hour of the night, until I just gave up on sleep entirely. That Friday, I went to the bar again, even though my wife couldn't drink, being pregnant and all, and Neil wasn't really any fun to hang with anymore, and none of my other friends could seem to be reached. I just needed to get a good buzz, and I'd start feeling better, I reckoned. After drowning a couple of beers, I excused myself to the restroom when I noticed I was more inebriated than I'd estimated. So I leaned over the sink to splash some water onto my face, and that's when I heard it, like a sheet of fabric being dragged across a floor. A voice rasped ever so quietly out of the drain. It sounded like a prolonged exhale for the longest time until I finally recognized words hidden amongst all those vowels. Cracks appeared in the porcelain, snaking out from the ring around the drain. At least, they looked like cracks at first, but after a few seconds, I recognized them as the same tendrils of corruption I'd seen in the comics earlier that week, snaking their way slowly along. I stumbled backwards out of the bathroom door and right into someone's chest. I turned around and stared up into the pitch black eyes of a 6.5-foot biker with tattoos covering every piece of exposed skin besides his hands and head. I stumbled quickly away from him and his evil piercing gaze. Followed me as I retreated through the bar. It felt like a dream, where whenever you're running for your life, it feels like you're running through quicksand. As I walked across the room, I noticed the biker wasn't the only one staring at me. It seemed every pair of eyes in the place were focused on me, and more than half of those eyes appeared to be perfectly black, with no hint of iris or sclera. A few lips moved, and though I couldn't hear their voices over the sound of the jukebox, I could easily guess what they were saying. He comes. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I haven't been getting much sleep for the past couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, which I'm guessing those of you who've spoken to me recently could have guessed. I keep seeing those pitch black eyes staring at me. I'm afraid everyone I see will turn and whisper those words to me, staring deep into my soul with that evil glare. Every time I go near a sink or go to grab a bite to eat, I'm afraid I'll see those inky, snaking tendrils squiggling towards me. Even my wife has seemed cold and distanced lately. Then tonight, as I'm driving home from work, struggling to keep my eyes open so that I don't drift into oncoming traffic. My cell phone rang, and it was Rebecca. She was on her way to the hospital to have our baby, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I was actually happy. She was in the labour room, strapped to a monitor when I got there, watching for her contractions. She barely noticed when I walked in, but didn't seem startled when I sat down beside her and took her hand in mine. I tried talking to her, but she was unresponsive, and I was so tired I didn't even realize I had started to drift off to sleep until the nurses came in and started moving her to the delivery room about a half an hour later. I put on my scrubs and a hairnet and went in with her to hold her hand and coach her through like they'd trained us in Lamaze when she started cursing and screaming. I was prepared for that, as well as her ever-tightening grip on my hand. But when I saw the movement in her tummy, my mind started to reel. The doctor said the baby was crowning and told her to push. I echoed his orders, and she screamed at me with a voice I couldn't begin to describe. When I looked down at her, she was staring up at me with those same eyes I'd seen on the biker. The same eyes I thought I'd seen on Neil weeks before. I tried to jerk my hand away, but she maintained her grip. Black, tar-like blood splashed the front of the doctor's scrubs, but he seemed to pay no heed. When I looked at her tummy again, black veins seemed to stand out beneath her skin, pulsating. She continued to stare at me, and she was no longer screaming, just grinning. Those obsidian eyes boring into me. To invoke the Nespertian hive mind of chaos. He who waits behind the wall. The doctor continued as he stared down at the child. My child lying silently, cradled in his blood-stained hands. He looked up and raised the baby, and it appeared to be covered in oozing, inky black liquid, much like that had covered Neil a couple of weeks prior. It did not cry out, but it was alive, and it moved when he held it up. When its eyes opened, they were as black as my wife's, as black as the doctor's. In unison, they all breathed his name. Zalgo. I ripped my hand free of my wife's iron grip and stumbled out of the room, barreling into the nurses passing in the corridor just outside. When I stood up and looked back into the room, I could see the inky black tendrils seeming to extend from the doctor and my newborn across the floor to where I stood. I turned and ran down the hall to the elevator and slammed my finger into the buttons. When I looked back, the tendrils had come into the hallway, yet no one else seemed to notice until it slithered over their feet and up their legs, at which point they abruptly stopped, turned and looked at me with those same obsidian eyes. I abandoned my effort to call the elevator and broke into a panicked run for the stairs. I ran down the 15 flights of stairs all the way to the lobby, tore ass out into the parking lot, hopped in my car and started driving. I didn't know where the fuck I was going. I just had to get the fuck away from there. I don't know if I'm going crazy. It certainly seems like it. But I just can't be around anyone I know anymore. They all have those same eyes and those same dead stares. And even my child. Oh God, my baby. I still saw those eyes staring at me from the cars beside me. And by some strange coincidence, the same biker from the previous Friday night at the bar pulled up beside me an hour away from the hospital and followed me for nearly 2 miles. He'd turn and stare at me, grinning. I couldn't see his eyes through his sunglasses this time, but I knew it was the same guy. His tattoos seemed to move of their own free will. The flaming skull on his right bicep began bleeding from its eye sockets. As soon as I could, I slammed on my brakes, allowing him to fly past me as I swerved to my left and did a U-turn. I think I lost him. That was about an hour ago. I'm at a motel 3 hours out of town, the first place I found that has Wi-Fi, and I'm tired, and I'm shaking, and my hand itches where my wife's nails scratched me open. I honestly don't know what to do, or who I can turn to. This story will sound insane, and I'll probably be institutionalized, and I'm not sure that wouldn't be the best thing for me, but I just can't bear to look into those eyes anymore. Every time I see someone new and they stare at me, I start to panic because I know. I just know it's out there looking for me, whatever it is. And even when I lay down and start to drift off to sleep, I hear those words. He comes.
And I guess there it is. I gotta say, this one is definitely, it's good, but at the same time, I feel like the pacing's a little.
I'd absolutely agree. The idea is pretty compelling, but yeah, the pacing definitely lets it down. Because yeah, it's sort of like as soon as you think it's kind of gonna start going, it like pulls it back again, and then it starts to get going again, and it kind of pulls it back, and yeah, you're sort of not sure where it's really going, and yeah,
And it's weird because it does leave it up to question, well, up to the, I guess, reader to determine what's going on. But for me, it's like, yeah, this guy's fucking schizo.
yeah, it does seem more like that yeah, it's all within his head, and yeah, he's the one sort of like experience all these odd things that are kind of happening in the world. It doesn't seem like, yeah, it is like, I guess there's something corrupting everyone around him, as it kind of sort of makes out to be. Like, you know, it's from his perspective, it, you know, corrupted Neil first, and then the soy sauce packet, and then the cartoon strips.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he was just slowly losing his mind. That's what I'm thinking.
I think so too, because
it kind of sounds like, yeah, if you were to go on a message board and it's just like looking at this thread of just this guy who's clearly schizophrenic, and you can kind of see him slowly losing his mind.
Yeah. That's, I guess, yeah, because it is a bit of like, there's little updates, you know, sort of like it starts off one day and then, you know, skips a couple of days, and then they come back and it skips a few more days sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. Although, can I even use schizo?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Like in my head, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's basically shorthand, but it also feels a bit derogatory.
It is, I guess, a little bit.
Not only that, but I'm not sure if there's actually many people outside of Australia that would use something like that. I
guess, yeah, it does feel more colloquial to Australia, but I guess, yeah, to be more specific, we're referring to schizophrenic behavior, or or disorder, I guess. But yeah, it was, I guess.
Yeah, it's just giving me that vibes is that he's just, again, slowly losing his mind and just seeing things that are not there.
Yeah, because I think I'd probably maybe even go to say as far as like Neil's behavior is just him, yeah, like just Neil sort of reacting to our protagonist, which I don't think we get a name for. Yeah, just sort of like, okay, why's my good buddy here acting so weird, and like sort of telling me to go home, and yeah, sort of eyeballing me as if like I'm the weird guy sort of thing.
That explains why he doesn't bother to show up after a point.
Yeah. And I guess even like there was a moment where, yeah, like he's like, I need to go and get a drink on Friday at the bar again. And like he says, like all my other friends weren't contactable. So whether that's like, I guess just his perspective, or yeah, sort of like everyone around has sort of been like, you know, He's acting real weird. Maybe just like give him some space to process.
Although, well, besides him, well, losing his mind, what else do you think could be at play?
Yeah, I guess if I hadn't done a little bit of research into Zalgo prior, I probably would have completely agreed with you of that. Yeah, it's just a mental health sort of thing happening, crisis. But I guess the fact that there is this entity in play in the background.
Well, of course, it's creepy. It's a creepypasta. So yeah, like 9 times out of 10, it's some entity.
Yeah.
I was just trying to be like, I know it's an entity, but it's just giving me a lot of like schizo vibes.
Yeah. I think it kind of, there's definitely a lot to, I guess, work with, because it doesn't really. It could be like an alien entity, or it could be more demonic, sort of that going that way, more religious sort of entity in a way as well. Because you get like obviously the black ooze, which that makes me think more alien, because it's sort of like, I guess it feels like it's the ooze itself that is the entity. Yeah.
Although the funny thing is, when he mentions chucking the his lunch and the iced tea into the bin.
Yeah.
I just imagine him throwing iced tea, the wrapper, into the bin.
Oh. Yes.
Don't know why, but
yeah. Fair enough.
I was going to say that's where he belongs, but he's got a few all right songs.
Yeah, I like Ice T.
I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of him, but he does have a few good songs.
He's
although didn't he create a metal band, Body Count?
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, I think Body Count is maybe more interesting than his hip hop stuff. Also, like, it's so weird that he is an actor as well and is in like countless series of Law and Order as well, as like one of the sort of supporting characters for a very long time. Anyway,
I guess we should get back to it instead of looking back at a particular decade.
Yes, I guess segueing or using that as a bouncing off point. We don't really get, I guess, a time that this is set either. The only thing that sort of like stuck out to me, there was a moment where it mentioned cell phone, which I thought that was funny. Like, I hadn't heard someone say cell phone in a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that
don't they just shorten it to phone now?
Yeah.
Although if you really want to be nerdy, I guess if you want to really be interesting, you could say cellular phone.
So yes, on my cellular phone.
God, even that was quite obscure back in the day.
Yeah.
Because again, they would always do cell.
Yeah, cell, I think, is just makes more sense. Easier. Rolls off the tongue.
Although, bring back the brick phones. It's both a phone you can, take with you and use as a self-defense weapon if needed.
True.
Because weren't they fairly heavy units?
Yeah. Particularly the ones that like have their own briefcase that you have to carry with you. Crazy how far we've come.
Although, I wonder if someone's done that, actually kind of updated the old Nokias to actually run on the new networks. Because I think that would be kind of awesome to kind of have them kind of like quite literally bring back the classic Nokias.
Yeah, I don't think so.
There would have to be someone who's done it as a passion project.
Potentially. Because I know, there's been a bunch of phones that obviously were bricked when they've removed the 4G network. So yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Well, my old phone hasn't been bricked yet. Like, yes, it can't make calls and shit, but I can still use it even though the battery itself is, this battery was already on the way out.
Right.
Like, literally, I could take it off charge for like 5 minutes and it would probably drop 5%.
Yeah, okay. I guess the other thing as well, I guess if you've never heard of what LeMaze is or Lamaze.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have realized that, like, because he says, with Rebecca, but that's first. He's like, I'm going to LeMaze class with Rebecca. And it's not until later that you find out Rebecca is his wife. So there was just, I guess when it comes to the grammar and writing, there is, definitely.
Well, I guess it would kind of be implied.
Yeah, it would have been implied, but I guess, if you didn't know that sort of thing.
Although, I wonder what those classes are about.
It is basically sort of like preparing you for assisting your wife or your partner in the birthing process. So, yeah, I guess prepping you for what's to come. So, yeah, doing all your
I guess that's a good thing. Although knowing me, I'd probably still go into blind. I like going into things blind.
Yeah. Well, speaking from experience, yeah, you can do as much prep as you sort of think you need, but yeah, it's nothing will really prepare you for that experience. And even doing it
I know that much, and I don't even have a kid.
Yeah. So yeah, there was also, I guess, a lot of grammar stuff that was.
Although that's kind of a given, especially with the earlier creepypastas.
Yeah, the creepypastas.
What is with my English lately? Creepypastas. There we go.
Yeah, I guess it kind of just feels like this is like first draft, and there hasn't.
Although saying that again, a lot of the earlier creepypastas would have been written by relatively young people too.
Yeah,
so.
That as well.
And even I still can't spell and do grammar these days, but
yeah, yeah, fair enough.
Like my level of writing is basically weapons grade fanfic,
right?
which basically describes like 90% of my work. Well, probably not, because most of my work is basically spec sheet, because I'm always drafting up fictional designs.
Yeah, I guess you've got a. With that sort of stuff, you got more of like a pattern with set designs where storytelling, there's
about 50 million different ways to do one conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Or interaction.
Yes. And many different ways to approach it, depending on the story and what the outcome is.
Although I like the term weapons grade fan fiction because it implies a lot of things.
I think you also made a really good point when we were reading through, where there was the moment where the protagonist goes to check on the oil spill that he assumes is going to be there from Neil, and doesn't find anything. And you pointed out that that's pretty much impossible if there really is an oil spill, because oil gets everywhere.
I know. I've done enough time working on machines to know, the fucker gets everywhere.
Yeah. So you would,
even when you're like got it all prepared, just have the bloody catch just a little too far off to the side and on the fucking floor, and it's everywhere.
Yeah. So you would have kind of assumed as well that like the protagonist.
Although what I'm about to see, I do not condone doing this, but if the weed killer isn't doing you, used engine oil sure does the trick.
Right. Fair enough.
Although. Yeah, it's not recommended.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Actually, I think there's a few fines for it, but I guess that's a bit of what's a bit of landscaping tip for you?
Right.
Either that, or if there's a particular stubborn stump, just drill a hole in it, pour a heap of old oil in it, and watch it just wither away.
Yes.
Either that, or you can burn out the sensor, which a bit more hassle, but
I guess you get a few good nights out of a free campfire stump. Could be a good way of getting around it. So, I think... I
guess Briggsy's tips for how to get fined to oblivion.
But to my point, I think like the protagonist probably being a mechanic should have realized something was pretty weird from that moment as well. Or at least been, more questioning to Neil of like, when do you have the time to sort of like clean up all that oil that spilt earlier in the day? Little things, I think that, probably, I guess you could say a sort of like plot holes or little points of conjecture.
Although, overall, it is a good story.
Yeah. As I said, really good idea. Just sort of, I think it definitely could have been shorter.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
A lot of points, and that's probably,
I think, I was like, just looking as you kind of like going through the thing, I was like, this should have probably ended maybe a page or two earlier.
Yeah. There's also some things that like were said that kind of didn't need to be said as well. Like when, like he's like, I'm going down to the stairs. I've like made my way to the stairs, and then I've gone down 15 flights of stairs. Like, just saying stairs twice doesn't really make sense there.
Like, even I, who's, again, not good at writing stories, know that you shouldn't really double up.
Yeah, and that...
Although actually another problem when I'm writing stories is I get into a little too much detail about my firearms, but I guess that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Guess,
Although, come on, when your favorite pistol is the H&K P9S, you're definitely on the spectrum.
right.
Especially when you want it in 30 Luger. That's just like the TISM special, because it's like he uses 30 Luger nowadays.
Right. Okay.
Enough about that.
Yeah.
God, I could probably go on an hour about talking about firearms.
Yes. I don't doubt it. I guess, obviously, I think we also have either a geology fan or a Minecraft fan, because at some point he starts using the word obsidian to describe the darkness of the eyes that he's seeing, and he ends up saying it quite a lot throughout after sort
Although
of the
it's a
halfway
good
point.
descriptor, though.
It definitely is. It's funny that it doesn't come up earlier, and then at some point it's sort of like that's the one word that gets used to describe the eyes from that sort of point on. But I just thought that was sort of a funny thing to point out. We'll probably wrap this
up anyway, because, well, there's not much more to talk about, is there?
I don't think so.
Well, there's nothing really I want to talk about. If anything, I'll give it my rating.
Yeah.
I guess just to be a bit more critical, which I think would be good because, well, we've been ranking most of them relatively high speaking. I'll say when I pull up the chart. I think
That's what I was doing. Yeah.
I think there's maybe a handful that we kind of gotten below 5, but for the most part, they're like, around the 7, 8 on its own. I think, the pacing hurts it quite a bit. It's good, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to, again, give it like a 4.5. I think the pacing really hurts it. Not only that, but its wording and structure could probably do a little bit of improvement. But as a creepypasta, this one's tough. I can definitely see why it's up there as famous, but I would say it's probably one of the weaker ones. I think I would probably give it a 6.
Okay. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that really hurts the story for me is definitely the pacing, and which makes it feel like it's the first draft sort of thing. So as just a standalone story, I'd probably go a 3.
Well, you're more critical than I am.
Yeah. And then as a creepypasta, I think I'd probably go, I think same as you, a 6. All right.
Although I guess, what am I doing for next episode?
That's the question.
Honestly, I don't know, because I have 15 million other ones to choose from, basically. Although I was going to say we could do Ronald McDonald House, but no. It's one that I have a weird relationship with. I like it, but I also hate it, because it is kind of a bit outlandish for my liking.
Okay. Interesting.
Although, great, I'm going to give a review of it here, but no, I'll cut myself off here. But I guess, you know what? Let's do one that I actually find kind of neat. I think it's a short one, but Laughing Jack.
Oh, okay. Cool. I know, you've mentioned that one in the past.
I think might even follow up with Eyeless too.
Okay, cool.
So I guess there's my next 2 taken care of.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess, let us know in the comments what you guys think of He Comes and where it ranks for you out of 10.
Not only that, but don't forget to share this with your friends, your family.
Absolutely.
Not only that, but if you do really enjoy it, give us a like and even subscribe.
It definitely helps.
Because, well, there's definitely going to be more of this coming out.
Yep.
Although I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next, because I'm not sure if I'm just going to do, the fortnight. Well, definitely doing a fortnightly schedule, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be rotating in and out this with, the D4DJ side of things. But
right.
I think I'm going to make the executive decision, and I think we focus on creepypastas because they're a little bit easier to edit.
All right.
Unless I have a brain fart and just stumble through. Because, there was some that I don't know how we managed to kind of get some of them out on schedule. Although I think there's quite a few that were behind schedule.
Yeah, it happens. So I guess in 2 weeks' time, most likely another creepypasta, one of the ones that Briggsy has mentioned he will cover.
Also, I guess before we go, if there's any you would like to suggest, please do, because, well,
absolutely,
there's probably going to be something there's going to be a lot in your blind spot, but
Yes.
I don't think there's going to be, my blind spot's going to be mostly newer stuff.
Yeah. So,
And I would like to kind of read some more of the newer stuff.
yeah. And yeah, I'm definitely open to any and everything, whether good or bad. Happy for any suggestions. So yeah, leave them down in the comments.
I guess we need to really do one which is just trite.
Yes.
Although I'm not sure. Well, I guess send in a particularly bad one.
Or at least what
Although
you think is bad. We might actually enjoy it.
Oh, yeah, I have that problem a lot.
All right. Catch you in the next one.
Yeah, see ya.